Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Rebecca and I'm a nurse, certified ketogenic nutrition specialist, a certified primal health coach, and I am also a PhD essential coach for Dr. Ken Berry. And I am pleased to be here with Chad Myers, known as Combat Carnivore, talking a little bit about mental health and resiliency and the carnivore diet. So Chad, welcome to my channel.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for reaching out and having me here. Seriously, that
Absolutely.
means so much to me because it's all about getting this message out. And right now, 22 veterans a day are committing suicide,
Yep.
and 135 Americans a day are committing suicide, and
Mhm.
68 point something percent of those who are committing suicide are straight white males. So uh we
Wow.
don't really know like what's going on with men's health right now, but it's obviously not good. And so yeah, I just want to, I think it's if you're a man, you're four times more likely to try to or to commit suicide than if you're a woman. So not that women's mental health is by any means of the imagination not to be taken seriously, but I think men's health has kind of been pushed to the
Yeah.
wayside. And with the culture of what's going on with men, they don't really reach out for help. And when they do reach out for help, or sorry, when they do reach out for help, rather, uh, they're they're kind of not given the right tools to deal with it. And
Yeah.
I think it's also met in society not as well either. So I've been trying to get this message out, and for you to have me on the show, is really uh, to nurture and nourish that
Mhm.
that new kind of push to reach out to men. It really means a lot to me.
Yeah, well, I'm connected to the military because my dad was a Vietnam veteran. He had PTSD and he did attempt suicide a couple of times, from what I understand. I was too young to remember it. And, my husband's active duty and has deployed multiple times. And we have seen people commit suicide over the years. We had a good friend that actually committed suicide. And it is a tragedy. And there is hope out there. So tell us a little bit about you and how you came to carnivore space and your background and kind of why you're pushing this agenda forward.
So, I was in the military for 11 years, and
Mhm.
Army and Navy, and I don't tell a lot of people this, but I went to OCS for the Marine Corps, and that was, oh my God, a nightmare. Uh, but yeah, and as I went through, there's a few events that happened to me where I just started going down this dark spiral of panic, phobias, anxiety, brain fog. God, the brain fog was unbearable. And as Carrie Mann said it, he's like, you just feel like you're drunk all the time. And that's the way I felt. It was horrible and debilitating. On top of the
Mhm.
fact that I had nonstop chronic gut issues, there was a point in my life where I was going probably four times a week. You say three to four, but the more I think about it, I think it was more, where I would have chronic like flu symptoms a week, where it was like severe migraine. It felt like barbed wire was going through my gut. And I even right now I'm kind of going through all my VA paperwork, and apparently that's the exact wordage I used with the doctor. But yeah, it felt like barbed wire is like being pulled through my digestive system.
Mhm.
Everything was coming out the back end. I was in my 20s getting scopes, I up
Mhm.
and down my my orifices, and yeah, it was just miserable. And I don't want to get in too much of it, but I basically wanted to die. And though I wasn't actively like suicidal, I was planning different ways to die. And my wife was also going through manic depressive bipolar disorder, PT, or what do they call it? Where postnatal, where it's
Uh,
postpartum
po- uh,
depression.
Postpartum depression. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was suicidal, and it was all like we were all just a hot mess, right, for the longest time, and
Mhm.
we were trying to figure out ways to get it better. And what when I don't remember exactly when, but I started noticing that certain foods were related to my panic and to my anxiety. And so I started doing some heavy research on diet and mental health. And there were some things, and 10 years ago, things were different in the nutritional world, and you couldn't really find anything. And this is why I'm so upset with the way the food industry works right now and has worked for a while now, is when you type in what is a healthy diet, what should I do for my anxiety, blah blah blah, it's very specific powers that be that have the monopoly over that information. So
Yeah.
I did a video on this, and it's about to come out actually. But I go like, okay, what is a healthy diet? Let's just start like, hey, I'm making a conscientious effort to fix my diet and lifestyle. What is a healthy diet? You type that in, and you get BS, pages
Mhm.
after page, AI overviews of what is a healthy diet, and it's not. It's just objectively not good for you, but it's like the plant-based agenda. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Red meat isn't
Mhm.
mentioned on there at all. You know what I mean? And so that just kind of frustrates me because I did that. I went down all the paths. I went down every fad diet, and it was exhausting. But I did go on ups and downs because what ended up happening is I got off all processed food. So at least most of
Mhm.
us agree when we make that decision to get off processed foods. And
Exactly.
so I said, yeah, I went on my ups and downs, and I'm skipping a lot here. I'm omitting quite a bit. However, I ended up finally, I don't know, a couple years ago, seeing a video of Paul Saladino getting
Mhm.
his ass chewed. Sorry for my language. I saw him getting
No, you're good.
yelled at by the doctor show. It's a bunch of women on that doctor show just screaming at him. And it was, and let me backpedal a little bit. I went from specialist to specialist to specialist, saying
Mhm.
like, I am not doing good. And they're like, well, a lot of your labs say you're doing all right. And I was like, yeah, but I
Mhm.
am obviously not. I go to the hospital every once in a while because I cannot stop throwing up, and whatever medication they give me usually can't stop it. So I need to go to get like medical attention.
Mhm.
Um, on top of the fact that like I'm pretty sure that my food is causing my panic attack. And I did this ice like kind of my own version, which was not probably good in retrospect, but my own version of an elimination diet. And
Mhm.
the elimination diet, as I added foods back in, I noticed my panic got worse as if I left it out, as compared to as if I left it out.
Mhm.
And they were like, no, you're kind of crazy. Here's some SSRIs. Here's some antipsychotics, whatever. And even when I would start, I would premise the entire thing with saying, I do not want SSRIs. I don't
Mhm.
think this is the case. I want to fix this like a little bit more holistically and naturally. Still, they would be like, this is psychosomatic. Here are some drugs. You're out of whack. You're broken. You have PTSD. You have whatever, right?
Yeah.
General anxiety disorder, phobia disorder, whatever. And I was like, it feels like you're trapped because
Yeah.
even the people who are supposed to know what they're talking about, they put you into a corner where it's like they make you think that the only thing that can happen, and this is the thing that makes me mad too, but they're like, what's your family history? What's the
Mhm.
past? What's happened to you? And I'm like, I get that those play a part, but that's just their automatic, like your predisposition to be broken. So here's an SSRI, because that's even more disenfranchising in my opinion. So as I move on, I see Paul Saladino getting yelled at. And though, you know, everybody who knows this world now is going to kind of uh, give me some feedback here, but just know this was me not knowing anything about an animal based diet. I see
Mhm.
somebody who has studied psychology, somebody who loves to look into the studies, and he's
Mhm.
talking and toting about uh, this diet, and he's a psychologist and how it can help with a litany of things, not so much mental health, a little bit, but about fixing everything. And I
Yeah.
was like, that was the first time I saw a doctor and authority figure that was in this realm talking
Mhm.
about getting better with this weird diet. And but any sort of doctor making a solid claim that diet is going to fix a whole litany of things, especially
Mhm.
psychologists. So I really gravitated towards that. And I remember that feeling of being like, whoa, you know what I mean? Because every single doctor just told me I was crazy. you know?
So here's
Uh,
somebody that's listening, that maybe not listening, but understands. He's like, here's a
yeah,
different approach.
exactly. And so that
Yeah.
and that was like unheard of.
Mhm.
And I even showed one of my doctor friends, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't really know." And I was like, "Okay." In hindsight now, me and him have conversations. But so anyway, I went down this path, and I started learning about fasting, and I started learning about a human, you call it the PhD, the proper human diet, which I love.
Mhm.
That's a great way to list it. But what and I never even considered it. How is it and I'm not the smartest person on the block, but I'm also not dumb. I was going through my degree in math and physics when this was going on. So it's like
Yeah.
I knew how to look at things objectively, at least in some aspects of life. How was it that I never even considered what humans had eaten for a million years,
Yeah.
what humans have eaten for their entire existence, and what was the environment in which that forged them into what a human being is now, because that's how we're going to respond to and react to most effectively. Like our
Yeah.
DNA is not 10,000 years old, our DNA is millions of years old. And so what were the paths that created that physiological structure, that biological demand? So I'm like, yeah, obviously, how come I'm just finding out about this? I've been
Mhm.
suffering for 10 years. And at that time I was just hitting 30. So it was like almost half my life uh that I was suffering. My 20s were gone, you know.
Mhm.
So anywho, I as I started to resonate with this, I remember I used to beg and pray for those 10 years, like, please God, please anybody, please whoever will listen and answer, give me an hour of mental clarity, an hour of no brain fog, an hour of no anxiety, an hour of no phobias, an hour of feeling like a human being, feeling like
Yeah.
before all this happened. And I was like, I will be forever grateful for 1 hour. That was kind of like my prayer. And I wasn't even religious at all then, but I was like praying to whatever would listen.
Mhm.
I was so desperate. And when I went on my first fast, especially after kind of going animal based, um, I got that. And I think right after day two or in my second day, I went, I was
Mhm.
mentally clear. And I think I was, if I recall correctly, I know I've said this before, but I was emotional. I was like crying, and I never show emotion. But I remember we were watching like a movie later on, and some weird like sad scene happened. It wasn't even that sad, but I was like crying, and my wife was like, "What is happening?" Yeah, because I was so emotionless for so long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so anyway, uh, then when I went back to the brain fog when I started eating again, and I was like, "Well, that's disappointing." And then I figured it wasn't the red meat, and then, I saw an interview with him, Paul Saladino and Anthony
Mhm.
Chafee, and then,
Yeah.
I kinda got in the Anthony Chafee kind of, fanboy, and then Dr. Sean Baker, "Oh, okay, this is starting to make sense." Dr. Ken Berry,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay, so there's, like, a whole legitimate backing to all of this." And then Dr. Bart K, I love Dr. Bart K. He's definitely has certain opinions about him in the field, but he's
Yeah.
definitely one of the smartest human beings in this industry, right? In this field. And
He's super smart in physiology. He's like the
yeah,
physiology guru. Yeah.
yeah. And every single advice I've taken from these doctors, but especially Bart K, has launched me to a next level of learning in this.
Yeah.
And so I started going carnivore, and sure enough, that mental clarity came back on carnivore, not animal based. And so I'd given up
Mhm.
all plants, all fruits. And what really sent me to the next level of feeling good was like getting rid of dairy and eggs and,
Mhm.
learning about the lion diet. And so now I even did an experiment in the last couple weeks where I've been grass fed, grass finished only. Like and that was an accidental experiment as I'm kind of moving right now because I'm not going
Mhm.
down to my normal butcher. And I even
Mhm.
feel like a whole leap better now. Like my energy levels are insane now. So it's like every single step that we make that's more towards the genesis of humanity and what birthed that, like the more in alignment we get with our ancestors, the better and better I feel. And
Mhm.
that that pissed me off learning that, because they have tricked you so much in every way, shape, or form. And even when you try to make deliberate decisions about fixing your health, uh, you get you get garbage. You get this Seventh Day Adventist religiously anti meat agenda pushed down your throat, and it's hundreds of pages because they have a monopoly on the market.
Yeah.
And they're the only sense of authority that's fighting usually against the big food companies. So they look like, yeah, we're fighting back against the machine, and they're the little
Mhm.
guy, but they're not the little guy. They have plenty of money. Kellogg's is no joke, you know. So
Yeah.
the other thing was when I went to see the resources, these doctors, these military avenues, it's like, hey, you're
Mhm.
suicidal. This is obviously a problem. There's a problem with mental health in the military. Cool.
Mhm.
I finally was like, let's do that. Let's go ahead and go down those routes, because I don't know what's going to happen if I keep going like this much longer.
Yeah.
Every single avenue I went down was, hey, you're loved. The world is better with you in it. Here's a drug, SSRI usually.
Yep.
And that was terrifying. And as I start going down the research, since 2001, 9/11, 2001, and then on its 20th anniversary in 2021, 7,000, and I keep messing up this number, so sorry, but 7,057, I want to say, veterans have died, or military men and service military men and women have died on the line of duty, right? Which is actually an incredibly low number, but still a lot, right? As of 2021, 20 years later, over 30,000 men and women who have served committed suicide.
Mm.
So you are four times more likely to commit suicide if you join the United States Army. You are four times more likely to die by your own hand. You are four times more likely to die internally than you are from the enemy of the United States. We are four times more efficient at killing ourselves than being killed by our foreign adversaries. So
That's insane to me.
it is terrifying. And
It is.
what launched me into this escapade was, you have had 20 damn years to get it
Yep.
right, to get it better. You have the systems that be, the powers that be, the amount of money that you have in research and development. You have had 20 years as of
Yeah.
2021. And if we're looking at 22 vets a day committing suicide, now that number is even higher. You know what I
Higher.
mean? For
Yeah. I mean,
2024.
yeah.
So tens of thousands of the people who sacrificed their health, their body, their life, their marriages, their mental resiliency. They had sacrificed
Mhm.
all this, and that's the best you freaking have. The best you have after 20 years is you're loved. The world is
Yeah.
better with you in it. Here's a freaking drug. And like,
Yeah.
no sense. And what's weird is, as I learn, I talk to Dr. Kiltz and these other guys,
Mhm.
you can lose your license if you don't give them the SSRI, and you can lose your license if you give too much of the SSRI. And the reason being is that SSRIs have horrible numbers. It
Oh,
increases
yeah.
suicidality in a lot of people.
And I think I saw, and I might be pulling this number out of the stratosphere, but I've seen statistics saying that it's upwards of like 50% of people actually don't even respond
Yeah.
to
Uh,
SSRIs. Like it doesn't actually work any better than a placebo most of the time. That's why if you watch commercials on anything you watch now, it's like add in Rexulti to your antidepressant because your antidepressant ain't working anymore. add in Rexulti, then that is I think it's a second generation antipsychotic, if I remember from pharmacology class. And the side effects of those, you know what that is? Metabolic syndrome. So,
Yes,
yeah, so you end up with diabetes and, you know, increased weight gain. Like my daughter was on one for an adjunct therapy to SSRIs, and it took us years to even get her fixed. So yeah, it's sad, isn't it? That this is
it
what they
is.
do.
You're right about the numbers. I think it's, and if I'm recalling off the top of my head, it was like 45 to 60% see some sort of effect, but as low as 30% go into remission, 30 to like 40%. So
Mhm.
it's a drug that is less, the in some numbers are less than a third of the people who go on it see a relief in their symptoms. So
Yep.
that, and then on top of that, there's enough of an increase of suicidality and depression and anxiety, and people acting on it, that the FDA has thrown a black label on there saying like, hey, this actually might make you worse. What kind
Yeah.
of drug, what kind of system do we live in after 20 years that's the best that you got for our
Yeah.
soldiers? And the worst part is you can't say addictive because of the semantics of the word, but it does
Mhm.
make you physically dependent. And
Yeah.
the withdrawal symptoms, and anybody who is struggling with mental health know that playing with your brain chemistry and your neurotransmitters, which is probably the reason doctors shouldn't be prescribing them in the first place, you know
Mhm.
what I mean, is a terrible thing that we're doing. We're messing and we're playing God with the chemicals of the brain with
Mhm.
people who are already sensitive and out of whack, right? With in terms of chemical balances. And in
Yeah.
retrospect, I feel like I understand that a whole lot more, but that's the best you got. So, and then I go down the rabbit hole, so don't get me started. But with the pharmaceutical companies, and they are the number one special interest group. They're the number one lobbyist. There's over
Yeah.
1,600 employees, people who are employed. Think about how big a business would be with 1,600 employees. That's just their leveraging
Lobbyists.
and lobbying companies.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
yeah, and then the insurance companies and the food companies are right up there with them. So
They all have the same shareholders.
yeah. So I get really frustrated going down that because I I think there's conspiracies that be, but regardless, whether it's conspiracy or not, the numbers are set in stone, which is
Mhm.
they have been failing us. And so I'm like sitting here and I'm like, there's so much evidence of diet and
Mhm.
lifestyle helping out, but
Mhm.
that wasn't mentioned to me at all. No, like
Yeah.
diet and lifestyle was mentioned to me maybe 1% of the time as I went from doctor to doctor to doctor. I was even going to chiropractors. I was going to holistic people, but I went through every
Mhm.
specialist that you can imagine without getting help. And I got nothing. And the only lady that really said something when I was getting on my SSRI, she goes, "Well, most of your serotonin receptors are in your gut, so maybe there's that connection there." That was the only lady who ever said anything, and that was the only conversation that we had.
Mhm.
So I got off my
She might have been onto
SSRIs.
something. Hmm.
She might have been on to something. And it's weird because like if you search like the vagal nervous system or the vagus nerve, you
Mhm.
learn up the gut brain connection, you learn about the blood brain barrier, you learn about your um what's this called, your alpha diversity, your gut microbiome. It's like the information's out there, yet you go to a mainstream doctor and they're like, no.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
I don't know anything about health, and I could go and look that up, but a doctor is like, yeah, nah, that's here's an SSRI. And I think that everyone's incentivized in the incorrect manners. They're incentivized by the wrong, like they're not incentivized to get you healthy. They're
Yeah.
incentivized to prescribe. Drug companies are incentivized for you to be sick. And when you first hear that, you think that's just ridiculous. However, when you start looking down the conspiracy rabbit hole, right, they are the number one
Mhm.
special interest group. They lose money
Yeah.
when we are healthy. That's
Yeah,
crazy to
they
me.
do. Yeah. So what year was it that you found the carnivore diet? Do you have a year on that? Like the meat when you first saw Paul Saladino and then started with Anthony Chafee. What year do you think that was? Or do you remember? Did you stamp it on your calendar? Some of us
Mm,
stamped it.
I know a lot of
We all
people
remember our
did.
dates.
Yeah. Like
Like,
when I talked
it
to
was
Dr.
March
Kerry Mann,
21st.
yeah, exactly. Like on Homestead How, he's always
Yes.
like, today's day 600 or today's, I'm like,
Oh,
I
I
have
know.
no
He's
idea.
I love him dearly, but wow, he must keep a calendar with it.
Yeah, I think so. It's like days since your last drink, like for
Mhm. Like food
alcoholics.
sobriety. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, carb free. Maybe they do something like that. However, I do not know. I know it was a couple years ago,
Okay.
and then I went animal based or not animal based. Then I went carnivore, but I was including raw dairy. And
Okay.
then there is some months back where I gave up the dairy, and then
Mhm.
a couple months back where I gave up like eggs and other things. And then it's been the
Mhm.
last 3 months, I would say that I've been more lion, and then it's been the best
Okay.
past couple weeks where it's been grass fed only. So it's like as I go more elimination, the more thriving I feel. And
Feel.
just to give you an example of how bad my anxiety and phobias were, and I'm very outspoken. I used to never tell anybody about this. I couldn't be alone because I thought my throat was going to close up. I was going to die based on an event that I almost died. So it was like a PTSD response, I guess.
Mhm.
But I couldn't be alone. And I always had to have like some liquid near me for whatever reason because I thought that would help. Because when I was without it, like my throat would start getting scratchy and closing up. And I couldn't drive myself anymore. I was kind of okay if I was driving with someone with me, but I couldn't drive myself anymore. And so like I was this grown man, like getting rides everywhere, getting rides to work. And at one point my work was half an hour away. So my wife was sometimes, including her own work, was driving 2 hours a day to come drop me off and pick me up. And our kids were little and we have 4 kids. And so they would have to come with us, be woken up super early, and it was bad. I was a huge burden on a lot of different things, but I didn't want anybody to know about it. And this is the part about
Mhm.
reaching out. Anyway, as I went more animal based, and even when I wasn't um, doing that great, I got so much better that I ended up being able to go down to Brazil by myself.
Mhm.
I went with somebody, but still not somebody in like my little trusted group of being alone or
Mhm.
whatnot. And I ended up flying back by myself. And if you know anything about me, my phobias, getting on a plane, first of all, getting on a plane without people I trust, going down to a different country in a different, the southern
Mhm.
hemisphere of the world, and learning, I learned Portuguese. I love languages though, but went down there, learned a whole new language. People didn't speak English down there, and then came back by myself. I earned my black belt in Rio de Janeiro, and it was that's how that's the polar opposites of who I was and who I became.
Yeah.
So,
Well, tell our audience that's watching a little bit about, because you mentioned Brazil and going down there and getting a black belt, but let the audience know what it's in.
okay,
Because
so
this,
yeah,
I know this is also part of your journey too, in
yes.
helping people.
So one of the only reasons I'm still alive today were two of the three pillars, right? And the third pillar is what makes me me now. But I call it steak, strangles, and stoicism. So carnivore diet, and then strangles as jujitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and
Mhm.
stoicism is my practical life philosophy. And if you are
Mhm.
religious or Christian or whatever you may be, please know that Stoicism is not taking away from Christianity whatsoever.
It's not a religion.
Stoicism,
Well, Stoicism is not a religion.
it is
It's a
not a
philosophy.
religion. It's a practical life philosophy
Yeah.
that is specifically designed not to question the gods, but it's kind of like what would that be? I want to say like the 10th Amendment. It's like whatever is not said in the Bible is left to for us to discern, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's not in the federal government is left to the states. That's kind of the way I look at it. And that's a great way of you taking responsibility over your own life and responses.
Mhm.
So a lot of people don't know that many of the
Yeah.
famous bishops and um, what's the word I'm looking for?
Priests, maybe?
Saints. Sorry. Yeah.
Saints.
Oh, look at that dog. Um,
Sorry. He's
no,
like,
no, I love
"Hi."
dogs. Um, were Stoics, or are they
Yeah.
Stoic-esque, or the fact that they research a lot into Stoicism to the point that the Serenity prayer is a Stoic based prayer. Like in essence, it's Stoicism. So, anywho,
I can see that, yeah.
yeah, what that's what Stoicism is like what can you change and what can you not change, and act based
Mhm.
off that. So, anyway, so snake strangles and Stoicism. So you're asking about
The
jujitsu,
strangles.
strangles. So Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is a submission grappling based martial art, and that I
Mhm,
got into, and I it helped my mental state so much. And as I research it quite a bit, that simulation of being in combat, that simulation of going into fight or flight, but in a safe place where you have no option but to enter the belly of the beast and
yeah,
go out the other side, you know what I mean? Kind of like a Jonah story. The
mhm,
more you do that in a safe environment in which you are in a trusted place with people that you build up that trust, people who are going to keep you safe,
mhm,
there's a set hierarchy. There's a hierarchy in which everybody who has gotten to that place has earned that place through
mhm,
this the through the means by which you're engaged in that community. So for in this case, you do not advance in jujitsu unless you have earned that
earned it.
advancement
Yep,
by showing it, by
yes,
being exemplary in that field. So, and that's why I think it helps with a ton of military people is being back to that
mhm,
camaraderie, that sense of hierarchy, knowing exactly where you stand, knowing that that person who can beat you has your respect. And knowing that person who you can beat, you give them respect because
mhm.
you were once there. No one started off good at jujitsu. Zero. Zero humans.
No,
Yeah.
no, nobody can start off good at jujitsu. Like,
Right.
we have, when we were stationed at Fort Campbell, there was a dojo that we started going to. It's Bowen Bowen Academy outside. It's just right in Clarksville. Um, and he's military, ex-military. He's retired, but that's what he does. A lot of military people go and train there, and he's trained military at Fort Campbell before. And he works with a lot of military veterans and PTSD and works with families. So it was interesting that to find another person that is doing something similar, but with the added bonus of, a carnivore diet.
Yes, exactly. And so I believe in the body is going to be as strong as its weakest link in when it comes to the
Mhm,
mind, the body, and the soul.
mhm,
And a lot of people don't know this, but we think of the soul now as kind of like this esoteric concept. But the
mhm.
soul, for the Greeks and for the ancients,
Mhm,
it like when you hear like respiration, to perspire, things like that, spire part is the spirit. So
mhm.
respiration is actually the spirit going in and out because whatever's living has breath, and that's what life is.
Yeah.
And even when they would worship gods, they would make sure that the mouth had to be open so the spirit of the god could go into like the
Mm,
statue or whatever. So if it was closed, that means yeah, a lot of. But anyway, the spirit was the breath. So we
yeah.
have to the mind, the body, and the soul all have to be taken care of because if you're like me, if your spirit's completely broken, but you are in great shape, there's only like your precipice and your apex of what being a physical specimen can be is limited. All
Yeah.
three have to be raised together. One cannot, like in a plane, all aspects of the plane have to be working efficiently for the
Mm,
plane to fly. So you can't have something dragging it down. It'll completely compromise the integrity of that flight. So
mhm,
that being said, um, when I do jujitsu, I started learning why is this helping, right? Because
mhm,
a lot of people talk about BDNF, which is brain derived neurotropic factor, right? And
mhm,
when you're in a state of stress or you have too much insulin, this BDNF, which it heals the brain, right? It's like
yeah.
adding uh, gray matter to the brain, depending on where it's at, but it also heals the hippocampus. And the
Mhm,
hippocampus, we know in people who have PTSD or depression, uh, it's shrunken in volume, either from prolonged
mm,
periods of stress or from junk food. So they do studies about junk food and uh, its impact on the hippocampus. And what's
mhm.
crazy is that our soldiers are fed nothing but garbage food, MREs for
Garbage.
21
Yeah.
days at
Oh
a
my
time.
gosh, they are so bad. Like,
Yeah,
my husband's gut when he comes back from the field. his stomach all the way to the other end is jacked up for the entire, like, it takes him at least a week to get back into some sense of normalcy, going back onto, like,
Exactly.
meat, like, animal-based diet.
Exactly. And you know what's crazy is you go to like the army.mil website and you look up MREs, it even says there is no fresh food in here. This is all ultra processed foods, and you can live
Mhm.
on this. And the like the Attorney General of the Army, you will just say call it that for now, says you can live on that for 21 days at a time. And by the way, that's not like 21 days and you have a long break. It could be 21 days, one like DFAC or galley meal, and then go back to 21 days. So we have no
Mhm.
idea how much garbage and processed food is being fed to our soldiers. Not that it's
Yeah.
intentionally malicious. However, that's just the name of the game. And
Yeah.
the thing that we're not being told about this, we're not being aware, become like no one is making us aware of the scenario that even just 1 week on a junk food diet has shown to increase levels of mental instability, right? And so, all right, so how do you fix this? It's okay, well, healing and BDNF. How do you get
Mhm.
on, how do you increase BDNF? A multitude of things, but hard exercise, high intensity exercise like hit training, sprinting.
Mhm.
But turns out that jujitsu or Muay Thai, but especially like jujitsu,
Mhm.
increases BDNF like a ton. And I love that. But also, you have to be in a state where you're no longer have insulin in your body, which is why it's so important that we get to a carnivore diet or a place where we're running on ketones to the point where
Yeah.
our insulin's not so high that's blocking that BDNF. So
Yeah.
it's like, and then on top of all of that, if you know anything about the culture of the military, I'm not dogging it. I was in it for a long time, but
Oh,
everybody
yeah.
is chewing, they're smoking, and
Cooking.
tobacco is a nightshade, right? It
Mhm.
decreases the size of the hippocampus. The alcohol consumption,
Oh,
major
they tell
depressant.
people, every Friday, there is a safety briefing,
The
and they're
safety
like,
briefing.
don't do this." But
Yeah.
then they're like, "Hey, we're having a military function. Bring out the grog."
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we it's everything is centered around alcohol, and it drives me insane.
And so that's always going to be or always has been a military foundation because when
Mhm.
you don't know if you're going to live to see tomorrow, alcohol is
Mhm.
one of the best things that puts you in the present moment and just gets rid of everything
Yeah.
and you're doing nothing but living in the present moment. But chronic use of alcohol is definitely a depressant and for people
Oh,
who
yeah.
need to recover. And so it's like one of those things where it's like you're using a medicine every single day of your life or multiple times a week or whatever. It's like you shouldn't be taking we understand the fact that we shouldn't be taking a antibiotic every single day. Like we would die.
Yeah.
So to use a medicine every single day is kind of like the way I look at it. But on top of that, energy drinks, caffeine.
Yep.
So like people are pretty much living in the army off processed foods, alcohol, tobacco, and nicotine, and
And caffeine. Yeah.
immense, I would say tremendous amounts of caffeine,
Yeah.
coffee, energy drinks. And
Agreed.
it's like
Agreed.
touted as like, yo, I'm like on my third energy. I'm on my third Red Bull. I'm on my eighth monster. And
Yeah.
you're like, what? And so luckily I
What,
never
like,
got
you
into
haven't
that.
your heart hasn't stopped yet?
Yeah, exactly. However, that's the culture. And so that all decreases the side of your hippocampus in studies.
Mhm.
It prevents your ability to produce BDNF. So, after you go through prolonged periods of stress, your amygdala becomes swollen. It's called amygdala hijacking, and that's when you start your amygdala becomes swollen. It's sending more and more things to the hypothalamus for fight or flight, and every time that happens, your hippocampus remembers that event, and it could have been a random event that wasn't related to really anything, and so you like start going through these panic attacks out of the middle of nowhere and your hippocampus ends up becoming smaller in size. So, how do we reverse that? And one of the things is jujitsu. It's probably why
Mhm.
I made it to where I was today. Is jujitsu help soldiers
Mhm.
not only for the overarching concepts I already laid out, which is like it's that environment, but at the same time as training your brain that you're going to make it through combat.
Yeah.
And it's going to increase the size of your hippocampus. It's going to produce BDNF. Granted that the system that you're in is not an inflamed, sick, and tarnished system in terms of what we're putting in the body, because insulin has damaging effects on all aspects. You inflame the brain. Once your brain becomes insulin resistant, right, your mitochondrial function and your neurotransmitters are operating at like a quarter of the capacity, and you have about a quarter of the amount of mitochondrial function or mitochondria in general in your brain. And then in addition to that, ketones become the only part of the only energy source that's crossing the blood-brain barrier after you become insulin resistant. So it's almost like you've forced these young men into a state of dementia or Alzheimer's, because it's like you overclock them for so much prolonged periods of stress while feeding them
Yeah.
garbage food. And so that's where I'm
Yeah.
like
I
sitting.
mean, it
And so
fits. It fits. Yeah.
I think this research has shown me why jujitsu kind of kept my heart beating for a while. And
Yeah.
stoicism kind of started making me responsible, being like being an observer of my emotions rather than a
Mhm.
victim of my emotions. And
Okay.
as outside events started to hit me, I would start to say, like, how am I responding to this? And though like all these chemicals are being pumped into saying like you're about to die, I could at least be like, this is just a chemical response. I don't need to
Mhm.
respond to it. And so that kind of helped me get out of the weeds a lot of the time. But going to jujitsu, I noticed a drastic difference if I didn't do jujitsu as if I did do jujitsu for my mental health. And then,
Yeah.
like I said, carnivore brought it home because I started to realize that the environment that we're in, like you could be as resilient as you want to, but if the chemical processes in your body are not working for you, you are constantly in a state of being like swimming with concrete around your feet. Like I think of a lot of these people who live in, let's say, like these islands who live in extreme stormy weathers, right?
Mhm.
Or places like Japan where they used to have what's it called, earthquakes all the time.
Earthquakes. Yeah.
They would never build big structures because it would just break down all the time.
Mhm.
And so it's like, how much can you build up before everything tears it back down in a place that constantly has hurricanes and tsunamis and earthquakes?
Mhm.
So what we have to do is we have to get our body into a physiological proper maintenance and processes
Mhm.
and maintenance cycle. We have to then, for veterans and men who are struggling with mental health, get you to a place where you're simulating combat, whether if it's for PTSD and recovering,
Mhm.
or if it's the fact that your life is too easy and the brain is designed to deal with atrocities every day,
Mhm.
based on what our ancestors had to go through. So go through the struggle with delayed
Mhm.
dopamine response, right? Delayed gratification, and then
Mhm.
start making you 100% responsible for the things that happen to you. So I know that's a lot of talking, but that's steak strangles and stoicism. That's a premise. That's how I came to
Yeah.
be. Finding carnivore and having these other things in my life are the reason why I'm alive today. And
Yeah.
now that I've laid that foundation, I know that took a long time, but,
No,
do you have
you're
any
good.
questions or is there anything you wanna talk about?
Yeah. So, what are you doing really to spread the word? Because my husband's really big on, he talks about like how men aren't men anymore. Like they don't have
Absolutely.
the, like, they they just they don't go through hard things together, especially in a time like in a peacetime. Like right now we're not really in like spread thin like we were at the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. So a lot of people haven't deployed. My husband last deployed in 2017 was when he got back from his last deployment. So it's been 7 years. And people like the units aren't even nearly as cohesive as what they used to be because they haven't gone through hard things. And most of the people that have deployed, like, there's not many left that are in right now. Most of the lower enlisted, they haven't. they haven't even deployed, so they don't even know what it's like and what it means to have true camaraderie. So, you know, people need to go through hard things together to build that, that relationship that is like a good bond, you know. So what are you doing with this? How are you reaching out to other veterans, other people with PTSD? Because it doesn't just have to be veterans. It can be people that are also struggling from other traumas. So what are you doing right now? How are you helping?
Well, you made a few good points, and you also kind of pointed to something that I guess a lot of people don't think about, but uh,
Mhm,
you don't even have to be a veteran. But like you said, however, these people who they maybe will get deployed in their lives, there's actually a study that was done, and it showed that people who have a decreased volume size of their hippocampus have a much higher
mhm,
likelihood of developing long-term PTSD.
mhm.
So, like, we
Okay.
even have precursors of people who are going to most likely be diagnosed with PTSD or experience PTSD or
Mhm,
not be able to handle the prolonged stress that they're about to go through. So,
mhm.
that's also something to consider. But I
Yeah.
I now am talking too much about it, and I've built up the confidence to talk about it and to be ridiculed. It's funny is I feel like I'm brand new to this journey of going online and talking about carnivore,
Yeah.
but I have already made enemies. Vegans are yelling at me, and man, they are demeaning.
That means that you are doing something right. When you get your first hater, oh,
Yeah,
it's a badge of honor. So
yeah,
all the vegan haters out there, we don't care. We carry it as a it's like a gold medal. Thanks. And
yeah.
it drives up the algorithm. So thank you.
Yeah, I have like a couple trolls and people that are just yelling
I
at me
love
and
it.
telling me I'm dangerous and telling me I'm like worthless and stuff. And I'm like, oh, and they're so condescending. It's funny. But I made a video with their comments and I was like asking ChatGPT, I was like, why are vegans so mean? Like as a joke. And it like gave
Yeah.
me a whole list of things. I was like, are they so mean because they don't have enough nutrients in their body? And it like actually gave me a legit anyway, it was a funny thing. But
They
let's go
lack
back.
B12 and B12 is very, very important.
They're so angry. Like when I talk to
No,
all the carnivores, they're so nice. And like all the vegans
most
are
of
so
them.
mad.
Most of them.
Yeah.
There's a couple that can be a little snarky.
Oh, for sure. Like Bart
Oh,
K's a little
Carnivore
snarky.
JT. Oh,
Oh yeah.
Bart K. Yeah,
Yeah.
Carnivore JT is super snarky. Bart K is very snarky. I was on his channel and it's really funny because I was super nervous. And he's really just the nicest person ever.
Yeah.
He's a lot of it's an act. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
It
exactly.
is.
You get yeah. But it really gets under people's skin. So let's say you're exactly right. And so Stoic quote is plan for the hard thing while it is easy, right?
Yes.
And so
Hmm.
that's why they tell you, like when life is too good, start seeking displeasures, right? Start sleeping on the floor for a month. Like don't touch hot water for a month. Do these things because then when it happens, when the thing that is inevitable happens, you are unfazed. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a quote that I read yesterday from Marcus was like, be like the Spartans and sleep on a hard floor. Prepare yourself for
Well,
war.
have you read the book The Comfort Crisis?
No, oh, but
Oh, you need
I've heard
to.
a lot about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's very intriguing once you listen. We listened to it on audiobook. My husband made me listen to it because we were on long drives. But it was very
Yeah.
interesting because when he went out and did hard things and he was in no comfort. He was cold. He was hunting his own food. All these things. So when he got back and he was like, "Yeah, it was nice for a couple of days, but then all of a sudden it was like, this sucks."
Yeah.
Like, the comfort sucked, and I was like, "Whoa." Like,
Yeah. You're
yeah, we're
given
too
meaning.
comfortable.
So what's very interesting is that dopamine has a very special relationship with many other chemical processes in the body.
Mhm,
Uh, but I call them, and I don't only call them this, but I refer to them as the motivational chemicals, right? The motivational
mhm,
processes. And the second dopamine is released in enough quantities, those other motivational chemicals just stop because it's like we got what we need. And if you think
mhm,
about it, the three hardest things that were to come by for humanity was to eat, because that took a hunt,
Mhm.
that took
Yep.
survival, that took
Mhm.
studying, right? To learn was the other thing. To learn something new oftentimes caused death, right?
Mm.
So to like experiment
Oh,
and do
yeah.
something new. And then the other thing is to, and by the way, that's for survival. The more you learn, right, the more
Mhm.
likely you are to survive. And the third
Yeah.
thing is for reproduction, sex, right? And in the first 5 minutes from when you wake up from the comfort of your bed, you can get all three of those things. You could stream yourself crazy and what's it called? Swipe doom scroll. You could watch porn and you could eat 2,000 calories within 5 minutes. Like you could do it all within 5 minutes. And those things were the hardest, most difficult things. And they made dopamine so rewarding. And when I say though, like um, it's like the chemical processes made that so rewarding because you needed all the motivation to make those things happen. Right.
Mm.
And so your chemical balance, the proper equilibrium and like homeostasis of the body is going through hell because
Yeah.
every animal, including our ancestors, went through hell to make it who we are today. And your biology and physiology is still mimicking, parallel, and exact to that. So when you go through hell, you have a distinct purpose.
Mhm.
Get through the day, get
Yeah.
food, learn your environment, get shelter. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
as you know, if you get those things, then you get to reproduce. And when I say reproduction was very difficult, people are like, not really. But if you look into our tribes, to earn a place within the tribe that they say you are able to reproduce with one of our women, like that was a very difficult thing to do, to make that claim, to have that right to reproduce. So what I'm saying is there's a lot, right? There's a lot that goes
Yeah.
into it, and no one's going to want to reproduce with you if you can't bring home food every single day, right? So it's a
Yeah.
precursor to all these things. All these chemicals are there to motivate you, but yet we're
Mhm.
all strung out. We're all being strung out. You know, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Here's a bunch of carbs, no fat.
Mm.
You know what I mean? No protein. So that way you're hungry later and you feel like you're
Mhm.
dying. Your insulin's going up and down. Your emotional status, the hangry epidemic, right? It's a
Oh my
real
gosh,
thing.
yes.
So
Yeah.
not only that, but we know, and I won't get into this point, that like fat and cholesterol is a precursor to many of the balancing of the hormones.
The
So
Yep. Yep, yep, yep. Sex
and
hormones, super important.
exactly. And then we also learn that vitamin D is one of our top regulators of our epigenetics. So what
Mhm.
genes are being turned off and on, like in terms of expression, you know? And so
Yeah.
we don't get in the sun enough. So what's interesting is when you're
Mhm.
going through hell, a lot of the time you're in the environment, you don't have comfort. And so to get to the comfort zone, right, that's where the dopamine comes in, but you're finally getting all those motivational chemicals, which
Mm.
is keeping you in balance. What is your purpose? And we learned from Viktor Frankl, right? A society or a person or a man without a specific purpose, right, will fill that void with pleasures. And filling the void with pleasures is more dopamine and addiction. So we're just pretty much like strung out, literally, uh,
Mhm.
addicted to carbs, addicted to sugar, purposeless, meaningless, like
Addicted
people
to
running
drugs.
around, addicted to drugs,
Dependent on the pharmaceuticals.
dependent on pharmaceuticals. And we are so distant from our purpose. And so
Yeah.
we become obsessed, and they call it circus and bread, right? They with entertainment and just getting carbs
Mhm.
whenever we can shove it in our face. So not having no relation of hard life in order for survival. In this country, you the people who are living on the streets are still eating every single day. You know, like it's
Yeah.
we're so distant from our purpose and how that purpose is related to our survival. And so
Yeah.
it's very important. So to answer your question, in the it's a constant recurring motif in Stoicism and Taoism and other practical life philosophies that it's like to plan for the war now.
Mhm.
You do not want to become a warrior once war has started. You
Mhm.
want to become a warrior in peacetime. Do not learn how to become a warrior once you are in a place where life and death is every decision. So
Yeah.
what do you do? How do you fix that? One, you put them through hell voluntarily, or you put yourself through hell voluntarily. And that's
Yeah.
like I would do these stoic challenges where it's like a 30-day stoic challenge. But that's why I think people love jujitsu. It's because it's hard and you get addicted to
It's
it.
well, I didn't do a lot of the jujitsu when I was there. I did the Muay Thai and the kickboxing,
Hmm.
but it was just like it was something about it that was addicting. It was addicting
Yeah.
because you did hard things and and you came out on the other side. You got punched and you got kicked and you got hit and you
Yeah.
took it and you walked out and everybody won. It wasn't like you lost. It was like everybody won something out of it. So,
If you hate getting punched in the face, go try to get punched in the face. Go join a boxing gym. If you hate being
oh yeah.
alone, force yourself to be alone every single day. And that's the obstacle is the way, or what is your most feared task should be the thing that is your most pursued task, right? And you do
Mhm.
that to the point where your fear actually becomes one of your strengths. So people are scared to get into, I'll get into this a little bit, and I think you might like this, but we are scared to get into a fight. We are scared of having
Mhm.
our existence challenged. And so,
Mhm.
like doomsday preppers,
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
you get to the point where the worst thing that you can imagine happening, you start wishing would happen because you're the one who's most prepared for it. So like when you start
Yeah.
learning how to fight, you're like, I wish somebody would. You're like, I wish somebody would because I am the most prepared for this in the bad
Yeah.
situation. So like
Yeah.
preparing to be a warrior, it's like I wish, I heard so many vets be like, yo, send me, because that's the
My
only place that
husband
they have
is
purpose.
all the time, all the time. He's like, "I don't wanna deploy, but I wanna deploy. There's
Yeah.
something about it." And he'll smell something, and he'll be like, "Man, it just took me back to Iraq."
Yeah.
Like, I must have smelled that a lot over there
Yeah.
because and I'm like,
I know that feeling for sure. So
"Yeah.
this is what's happening, right? So it's like when you go into hell,
Mhm.
when you get in that fight or flight and you survive, you release BDNF. Your body's like, oh, and that's why they tell you to sprint. That's why they tell you to do these things
Mhm.
because you're simulating a real life scenario that your body's like, we are rebuilding ourselves. We literally rebuild ourselves through trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
And so that's why PTSD should not be the thing that is wrecking us. That should not be
Yeah.
the case. We should be overcoming that and being stronger from these terrible events. Like right
Yeah.
now, if you took somebody from today and put them with our ancestors and they just had to survive one day, they would have a trauma response. They would be PTSD, they would be broken down. But that's our supposed to be our daily lives. So, in for example, why I love jujitsu is because being a martial artist keeps you
Mhm.
keeps you human in the worst of situations. And what I mean by that is when you are engaged in fight or flight, you go into the reptilian part of your brain. You go to the animalistic part of your brain, and you no longer think rationally. And so there's nothing in that moment. I shouldn't say nothing, but there's very little in that moment that separates you from the animal world, right?
Mhm.
And when you go into fight or flight, when you're compromised, and that's why the villain is always trying to elicit emotion from us, because animals can feel emotion, but they cannot feel logic, right? And so I say that in a very specific sense. Don't get mad at me if you're like an animal rights
No.
activist, but in a holistic sense.
No.
Yeah.
Not animal rights activist. PETA stands for people eating tasty animals. I'm so gonna get slammed for that.
I know.
Sorry.
But so the thing is, when you become a martial artist, what's the
Mhm.
likelihood, because you're in such control, that somebody's going to get you out of your fight or flight? You think rationally, you think logically, and then other events in your
Mhm.
life stop triggering you. And that's why things like jujitsu and martial arts is important, because it's like, man, someone was trying to choke me earlier. You think cutting me off is going to get me upset? Do you think like this project that needs to be done by the end of the day is going to get me upset? And that's the thing is,
Mhm.
things become minuscule. Things become
Mhm.
uh what's it called? Like differential. It's like, whatever, uh that
Yeah.
is insignificant to me because I know what is really important in my life. When you're
Mhm.
constantly facing death, the priority, the triage of what's important in your life instantly comes to being, right? It instantly becomes well known and apparent. So
Yeah.
when you become a martial artist, you are actively creating the state of being a human as much as possible. Even when somebody's trying
Mhm.
to attack you, end your life, that should send fight or flight. However, you get to remain human. And I think that's very
Yeah.
important, especially with people who are constantly being triggered into the fight or flight state, that jujitsu keeps them remaining human. And so
Yeah.
I think that's a very important state. So I tell people every single day you should satisfy at least three things in your life. One is the animalistic part of your brain. So like
Mhm.
you need to be healthy. You need to make sure you're eating a proper human diet. Our
Mhm.
species is the human race, right? And
Mhm.
we have a very specific proper human diet. That's just the way
Yep.
it is, whether you like it or not. If you're religious, just know that religion was very meat heavy diet. When Cain
Mhm.
and Abel both brought sacrifices to God, he got mad at the vegetables and the fruits, and he valued the animal sacrifice
The
a lot
animal,
more.
yeah.
And so
Yep.
animal sacrifice became the name of the game because it was valuable. It's what brought the most nutrients and it was
Yeah.
the most treasured. So, and we talk about this quite a bit. Treat the body like the temple, and
Mhm.
what was the most valued meat, things like that. So, anyway, religious, fine, treat the body like the temple. But if you go in the science
Mhm.
space, it's like what built human beings, and that was a proper human diet, which was red
Well,
meat.
it's fat and protein. Yeah.
Fat and protein, exactly. And
Yeah.
we can get into the Randall cycle and stuff, but regardless, the thing is we're not designed to be in a
I
constant state of
I was gonna
insulin.
say, we're not gonna
Yeah.
get into the Randall cycle because I don't want to be one of those people that Bart K does a response video to.
Yeah, you're right. He knows what he's talking about, but he'll come after you and I love it. But
He will.
you regardless of what you feel, right? The idea is that there is a proper species diet. And when a species is on a incorrect diet, they get very sick.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
so
we see that today, and no offense to vegans typically start this diet and they do or start a vegan diet and they do very well because they've eliminated so much processed crap, but in the end, there's a lot of deficiencies that end up happening, and it might not happen within the first couple of years, but it will eventually happen to where you have
mhm,
severe nutrient deficiencies.
it's like 3 to 5 years in, 84% of
Mhm.
vegans quit due to severe, and 90% of them, it's because of catastrophic health failure, right?
Yep.
So anyway, do something that satisfies your body
Mhm.
completely, the animal part of you, right?
Yep.
So there's the animal part of your brain, and then there's like the mammalian part of the brain, like the human part of the brain, and then we start getting into like I'll get into the soul, right? So do something every day that satisfies the animal part of you because you it's the foundation, right? People don't realize like everything stems, right? At the center of the brain is your reptilian part of the brain, your fight or flight, your survival skills, all that, the things that keeps your heart beating and your digestion moving. That is the center of your brain, and it develops more the more you go out.
Mm.
So satisfy the animal part of your brain. That's what I say. Then do something every day that makes you humanly unique. Or sorry, let's backtrack. Let's do something every day that makes you uniquely human in the sense that
Mhm.
what can you do that other animals cannot do? Can you do a martial art? Can you do art? Can you listen to music and appreciate it? Can you write a
Mhm.
book? You know what I mean? Something, whatever
Yeah.
gift that you bring, do
If you're
something.
like, if you're in the medical field, go out and do that and heal people. If you
Yes.
play piano. Yeah.
Yes. But the thing is, it's learning in that sense. And
Mhm.
that's one of the most important
Learn a
things,
new
right? You
language.
can learn. Exactly. Yes, absolutely. I love learning new languages. But uh, the idea is you need to be in a place of learning and it needs to be difficult. It
Mhm.
needs to be delayed. It needs to be a skill acquired over 10,000 hours. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
not just like,
Yep.
oh, I learned that today that the capital of Bangladesh or whatever, like, oh, that's not even a country. But anyway, you know what I mean? Like, that's going to be rough on me. But the idea is learn something new, not just like fun trivia. And that's, by the way, we're addicted
Mm.
to trivia is because we learn, 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 learn. But you need to do
Yeah.
something that's like learning long term that makes you something excellent. So something that can
Yep.
bring something that's uniquely human that animals cannot do. And then the third thing is what I was getting at, which I decided to go this way, is do something that makes you humanly unique. Means amongst all the other humans, what is something in your like that you can do that no one else can do? Who are you? Who is this
Mhm.
person? Are you just a mouthpiece for other people? Are you just regurgitating information? Are
Mhm.
your opinions just a coalition of in a conglomerate of all these other people's opinions, do you really know you? When was the last time you were off in the woods by yourself for like a month and you heard your own thought for the first time? When was the last
Mm,
time you went to a place where you were the only person who didn't speak that language? You know what I mean? And the culture was so,
yeah,
it was not even that you were by yourself. You were the against the grain of
mhm,
what their culture was. And so you had to see the resistance face to face all the time and learn a new language, learn what words are actually ascribed to meaning. And so
mhm,
a lot of the time when we learn a new language right off the bat, we fill in puzzle pieces. So it's like,
mhm,
um, gracias, merci, thank you. They all fit the same social context, right? When something does
yeah,
something for you. But actually, merci is acknowledging that you are merciful. Gracias is acknowledging that the act was gracious. Thank you
mhm,
is actually the person doing an act on the other person who did the favor. So it's three
mhm,
different meanings all applied in the same thing. So it's like you start to realize like, oh, this view, this way of life is all been built for me. And I don't even know who I am. It's all been built for me. And which is fine.
mhm,
Um, you just got to acknowledge that and become your own individual. So
yeah,
once you kind of start getting it, and that's where like the philosophy comes in of like stoicism or maybe religion or things like that. And I like philosophy because philosophy does not get in the way of my religion, and religion kind of dictates how you should feel about things a lot of the time, where philosophy is like more opening up, like how do you, like what is this about you that you are feeling this way, right? It's
mhm,
bottom up rather than top down, looking inwards. And so anywho, those three things. You start working on three of those things long term, putting in the effort over and over and over again. You will have a much happier life, in my opinion. And so, what am I doing? Is I'm putting this information out there, steak strangles and stoicisms, online communities. Like I'm working with the Steak and Butter Gang. I
okay,
have, uh, and we have like this men's group that we're getting started, but a lot of it's targeted towards veterans. In addition to that,
okay,
like being part of a community, but get part of a community like a jujitsu community. And
yeah,
what I've done, this is a very good question that you asked. What I've done is I have built the most, in my opinion, comprehensive introduction to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guide that literally takes you from being in your car, nervous about walking in the front door, bringing you in, showing you like this is where you line up, this is how you tie your belt, these are the taboos, this is
mhm,
like wear shoes here, don't wear shoes here, that some people bow here, like so you can look at this inside view of the gym before you walk in because I think most people have an adversity or some sort of hindrance to walking inside a jujitsu
in
gym.
the
It's
door,
intimidating.
walking into the dojo is very intimidating for the first
Yeah,
time,
especially with people who
and
have PTSD.
not all dojos are created equally.
Oh yeah, very true. So yeah, red flags, like red flags of a
Yep,
new gym and stuff. But regardless,
mhm,
it's like I have created this entire intro course where you could walk in and I bet you, like anybody listening, if you wanted to do jujitsu, but you've been nervous, you've been listening to Joe Rogan, Jocko Willink, whoever, and you're like, I've just wanted to do jujitsu for so long, but I'm so nervous to walk in the gym. By the
mhm,
time you finish this course, if you ever walk into a gym, they'll be like, where else do you train? Because you'll know so much of what's going on, you'll look like a natural. And you'll be like, I've never trained before, and they
yeah,
won't believe you because you'll have such a good comprehension of what's going on. It's like you'll be speaking the language before you even walk in. We give
yeah,
advice. It's not just physical moves. We teach you a ton of the entire foundation of contextual jujitsu from a 10,000
mhm,
foot view all the way to the granular. And in addition to that, what I've started doing, and this will start coming out soon, is I'm going to start live streaming every single one of my classes. So you could
okay,
be like part of my gym from a remote area. And then I'm going to put those live streams in an archive that you can join. And in that archive is my online community, which is a jujitsu based community where you can ask questions like, hey, I'm confused about this. And,
mhm.
jujitsu jokes and memes and inappropriate jokes, whatever you want in there. Right.
There's so
And,
many. There's so many. They come across my feed, and Donnie Bowen is always shares them through his
right.
gym, and it's so funny. They're
The
so inappropriate.
Yes, the
Like, you
culture of
have to be
jujitsu.
in the commuture you have yeah, you gotta be in the culture or have been in the culture to appreciate them and not be offended.
Right, yeah, yeah. We don't take ourselves too seriously most of the time in the jujitsu
No.
community. We kind of understand we look ridiculous and that we wear spandex, and we just, like, owned it. We just owned it,
Yeah.
and, no
Well,
one's good at
and
jujitsu.
talk okay, so no, well, there's
Mm-mm.
some people that are really great at it, but, everybody can learn more. So, with that, a lot of people look at jujitsu and they see it, and it's like the first time they see it is in the MMA octagon. So, if somebody is like, "No, I can't do that, I'm too old. I'm too broken. I'm too insert fault here." What do you say to them? Because I know what I say to them, but, you know,
I say that's an excuse, right? And
yeah.
we have seen 90-year-olds who have completely, with just a little bit of resistance training, build the same body composition as a modern day 65-year-old.
Yep.
So we have seen age reversing. We have seen in carnivore people reversing their
Mhm.
metabolic health extremely, right? But also
Yep.
when it comes to jujitsu, forcing your body in a hard spot is extremely therapeutic because your body's forced to adapt to the environment. And
Mhm.
not only are you learning something that is going to be practical for life, and in a sense where, hey, you not only are you getting workout, but now you know how to defend yourself. Now you're
Yeah.
increasing BDNF. Now you're building a community. Now you're, I mean, part of this camaraderie, so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
no, you're not too old. The body can adapt to
Mhm.
almost anything, especially if you're on a proper human diet, and especially if you
Mhm.
don't have excuses. And the one of the biggest issues that we see is they started making these relationships over the years. I don't know if you know about this, but what's the highest correlation with old age? So it's like all these people who are old, what blue zones get into it, but they do a horrible job at it. But what is the simulating or was the relating correlation? There we go. What are the
Yeah.
correlations between these old people and why they're old? What did they do while they were young? Give us some insight. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
you hear the worst answers. You hear like, I drink Dr. Pepper every day. I ate a pound of
Mhm.
bacon every day. I ate 12 dozen eggs every day. Whatever. It turns out that it at first they called it muscle density. So the more muscle density you
Mhm.
had, the better.
Mhm.
And the reason why that was is it turned out because of falls. So it's like when you would finally get to that fall and you would fall down and break a hip, the likelihood you lived much past that was very low. So if you had more muscle,
Yep.
you could handle the fall. Then it turned out
Yep.
that was not only muscle density, it was balance.
Did you see recently, I don't know if it came across one of my news feeds, and I don't know if it was YouTube or Instagram or something, but there is a country that is using judo and
Yes.
jujitsu for elderly people to teach them how to fall so that they do not break, and they're actually finding that these people are faring much better.
Yes, absolutely. So learning to break fall. So this
Mhm.
is the thing about life. I was just about to get into this is that you don't run away from the
I read your
inevitability.
mind.
Yes, you do not run away from the difficulty. You do not run away from the adversity. You make the adversity yours. And so what they find is they have these gyms where old people go to the gym and they start learning how to fall. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, so if a fall will come, and instead of pretending like it won't come, right? I'm gonna be the most badass person at falling. And then
Yeah.
what's interesting is as they fall a bunch, they build muscle density and bone density. And so now they
Mhm.
become more like now they're not scared of falling, and then that increases their balance, right? And so they're
Yeah.
very aware of how their body falls. Like when I was at boot camp, I would see people fall and land on their face, and I'm like, "Have you never fallen before?" It's because they lived such a sheltered life that
Mhm.
when it came time for reality to come, it just smacked them in the face. And we have all these
Yeah.
parents, these parents, these weak parents that
Yeah.
uh, they don't let their kids go through adversity because they think they're protecting their
Yeah.
kid, but they're making them worse for the world. They're making that kid
Yeah.
worse for the world. And so
Yeah.
uh, they found out balance was one of the key factors for longevity, is because people
Mhm.
knew they could catch themselves more. And even when they did fall, they knew how to fall. And so that fall that broke their hip doesn't happen anymore. And
Yeah.
as we get into this, start leaning into it. So it's like, people who do jujitsu, and judo is a huge aspect of jujitsu. What you
Mhm.
guys start doing is putting yourself in the inevitable. Yeah, of course, I don't want war to happen. but I'm going to be the most
Yes.
prepared for war. Of
Yeah.
course, I want it to be the case that we can. What's another good thing? I hope it's the case we can all get along. But in case
Yeah.
society collapses, I'm going to be the most prepared. Of course, I want it
Yeah.
to be that there's no car accident, but I want to have the car that is going to protect me best when there is a car accident, and I want insurance, right?
Yeah.
You have to prepare for the inevitabilities to the point where you almost wish for the inevitability to happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you are the most prepared. So, and this is another thing I think about PTSD is we've lived a life not only of eating junk food, but of avoiding the difficult thing. And then when you're forced to face a difficult thing, your brain does not have the physiological processes to go down to know how to handle
Yeah.
adversity. You know, like we see
Well, and
the,
I think it's not just that too, but it's also the toxic negativity that we
yes,
have in our culture because it does wire the brain in a certain way. And when you wire it to be negative, you're always going to be negative. And
yes,
we are not breaking those we're not breaking those connections and rewiring them to positive. And I see where all martial arts has a huge role in this because it does help rewire those negatives into positives,
you have
especially if
to.
you start little kids. If people would start their kids in martial arts training, we would have a much less weak generation of children growing up.
I completely agree wholeheartedly. Studies are backing this. Studies are, and what's funny is like they did a study recently. They're like, hey, is getting choked out all the time probably not good for the brain? It turns out that they actually have more oxygen in the brain because they were deprived. So the body has learned to adapt to get more oxygen to the brain. Like
Sweet.
it's, yeah. So it's like, it's always counterintuitive. Putting your kids through
Yeah.
hardship makes them resilient, makes them more great, like gratifying, like are
Hmm.
grateful for the things that they have. But
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying is when you start jujitsu, no one's good at jujitsu. And I was saying that as a joke earlier. No one's good at jujitsu. It's like even the
Oh,
people who are good are like, I suck at jujitsu. It's like the funny culture that you have to be part of.
yeah.
But it's just such an awkward thing. But the thing is, when you get started in jujitsu, it's nothing but losing for the first part of your
Oh, the
entire career.
first few years.
Yeah.
The
And so
first
all
few
of a
years, it's
sudden,
nothing but losing
right? So you're forced to,
until you hit that blue belt, and then you're a
right?
god.
So
Isn't that the running joke?
it's, yeah, that's a running joke. And then that's when you retire, like the blue belt
Yeah.
blues. So, um, the what with this is that you start off not being good objectively,
Yeah.
and there's no like natural talent. There's no like, oh, I just know how to do this. So we all have to learn how to lose frequently.
Mhm.
And then those kids build those things with it's okay to lose, but I'm growing.
Yeah.
I did a
Yeah.
little bit better this time. I did it. And so their mental
Yeah.
resiliency goes up. And we were kind of talking about that. And so when we start looking at not only for kids, right, but for adults, when
Mhm.
you do things that release BDNF and release stem cells, when you release stem cells from your body, uh, they have full length telomeres. If you don't know what telomere
Yes.
is, a telomere is the thing at the end of the DNA strand that helps mitigate DNA reproduction, right?
Yep.
Uh, and so when you get stem cells to the new parts of your body, which by the way does not happen when your insulin is high. So once you go into like, a fasting mimicking state, you go into autophagy and you start doing very difficult things for the body. That's when the body rebuilds
Mhm.
itself. You go to full length telomeres, which means that that's like a baby cell, right? And full,
Yeah.
like the more your body, your DNA replicates, the smaller your telomere
The
gets.
telomeres gets. Yes.
And then that means once it gets too small, the DNA cannot separate anymore. It cannot
Mhm.
reproduce, which means that cell will die without reproducing, which means
Yeah.
that all the cells in your body start to die. And that's where old age happens. And that's where,
It's aging. So, speaking of that, I think that there was a study that came out that said that red meat helped rebuild telomeres.
yeah, and the bone marrow, right? Because you're getting the
Yeah.
proper nutrients for the bone marrow. So the stem
Yeah.
cells are connected to the bone marrow, and that's where we get
Mhm.
like a lot of we never realize that a lot of our new like what keeps our body processes going is from the
Yeah.
bone marrow. And so how you treat the
Yeah.
bone marrow is very important. So having good bone density, right? Like having
Mhm.
like things are counterintuitive. It's like make our lives better, but it's actually
Mhm.
damaging. It's like we're de-evolutionizing ourselves by evolution, creating um, of evolution within society. And so
Mm,
as our society evolves, we devolve almost. So it's like that's why you have to seek discomfort. And so when I say to these people who are like, oh, I'm too old, no, you are not. You feel like you're too old, but you could easily start age reversal by eating red meat, going into fasting mimicking
mhm,
diet, fasting maybe a little bit, going through things that are very difficult, putting yourself into those states of fight or flight and finding the other side. And like you said, it's
mhm.
terrifying when you go into a fight and then when you're out of it, you're like, thank God I'm out. But then a minute later, you're like, I want to go back in.
Yeah.
I think I could do better, right? And you love being in those states because you're in a state of flow. So my gym is called Flow
Yeah.
State Jiu Jitsu, right? When you're in a state of flow, you are in the present moment. And that's where all life exists. And that's why we get addicted to it, is because you can't think about anything else except not getting hit, not getting choked. And you know what I mean? And then you're exhausted and you satisfied many of the aspects of your life of those chemical processes to earn your dopamine and earning
Yeah.
your dopamine through difficulty, ice bathing, and you know I'll get into that a little bit later. But as we start to release these different processes, it goes into age reversal because your body needs
Mhm.
to adapt to the environment and it wants to go through difficulties in order to release that. So if you
Yeah.
feel like you're too old, you're too fat, you're too slow, you're out of shape, good. Let's grow. Let's do it. Let's
Mhm.
reverse that. Let's like, okay, we're starting at a certain place and let's see where we are in a year from now. Like, good. Good thing that you have something to progress towards. Good.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get you in here and just get you started. No one in here is wanting to hurt you. No one. And
Yeah.
if you're in a gym where they want to hurt you, then that's not a
Then
very
you're in
good
the
gym.
wrong gym. Yeah, you
Exactly.
need to find a different one.
A consistent and continuing motif that I and theme that I throw in my gym is that everyone should be able to roll safely with everyone else. If my
Yep.
50-year-old mom over here who weighs 90 something pounds, and she's a badass by the way, but if she rolls with my 270-pound uh monster, they're going to
Yeah.
both have good rolls. You should be able to know how to make that roll good for you and good for your opponent and tailor it
Mhm.
down. And so all
Yeah.
these people are so excited for you to get involved. They're so excited for you to
Mhm.
grow. It's I don't know if it's a cult, but it's pretty close. And to the point where that they're excited to get you in, get you addicted because they know how good
Yeah.
they feel on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't buy any of the excuses in the sense that I don't think they are good excuses, but I do
Mhm.
understand that people have um reservations and which is why I
Mhm.
built my intro course, which is why I'm talking about this, right? And between veterans, between people who think they're beyond their prime, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever you think, like, what's your prime for tomorrow? It's like, yeah, you missed your prime maybe when you were 27, but what's your prime now? Create a new goal. What is that? Maybe, and that's a
Yeah.
beautiful full thing about jujitsu is I just had a 50-year-old mom, like I say, go compete at Worlds. We went to Vegas and
Nice.
she competed at Worlds because there are other 50-year-old moms out there, and I think one grandma who is like, I still want to hit my prime.
Mm.
I could be the best female grappler at my age in the world. Who else
Speaking of
offers that?
female grappling, this is just a plug because you said it and it triggered it. Every young lady should take a jujitsu class, even if it's just for the basics for rape prevention.
Oh yeah. What?
It's
Oh yeah. For a
like
lot of
every
prevention.
woman, well, yes, but every woman should take this type of a class because it can save your life. So that's a shameless plug for everybody that for
Yes,
all the women out there and all the parents out there with girls, throw them in a jujitsu class because
you are
guarantee you
you are
they
100%
are.
right.
Well, I tell you what, boys will not touch them because they will be afraid of them.
Yes. 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 It's okay. So a lot of the thing is when
Hard
predators,
target.
what
Make yourself a hard target.
predators exactly, they pick the weakest link.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I like it was
Yep.
funny when you're at when I'm there at Jiu Jitsu Con and Worlds and stuff in Vegas, it's like you can see exactly who's a grappler because they have a certain posture, they have a certain
Mhm.
confidence, they have a certain stability. Every men, women, children, you can tell exactly who does jujitsu by just the way they carry themselves. It's so distinct. When
Mhm.
predators go for the weakest link, and the second you start fighting back, they're like, "This was a mistake." They're out of there.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so, anywho, we make, for example, women's class every Wednesday. It's completely free. So, like
Mhm.
yesterday, we've had as much as 20 women in our class or more. Uh, and it's completely free. Like whatever woman you are, whatever place you're in, women taught. We have one of the best female grapplers in the world in our gym, Sarah Switek, and she teaches it. And so my wife is a purple belt and she helps coach it. So we have plenty of these badass women who
Mhm.
we offer it for free. And so, and
Nice.
then if you get the itch, then you can continue on. But regardless of what excuses you have, I have an intro course to get over it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like if you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm thinking about it, but I'm just not sure, go check out the intro course. Like what's the worst you're going to do is you're going to learn something. So
Yeah.
I,
That is the
my,
worst.
yeah, exactly. My
You're
goal
gonna
in life,
learn.
right? My goal in life right now is to, make veterans great again, get as many
Yep.
people on the proper human diet. This is my movement. I know there's a lot of
Mhm.
people who want to do this, but this is my, like, for example, my shirt, my merchandise. We're using all the proceeds. And then we have a Make Veterans Great Again rash guard that
Okay, that's cool.
through X
If
Marshall. So you
anybody
can buy
does
this.
not know what a rash guard is, I highly recommend, like, if you're gonna do jujitsu, you need a rash guard.
Right. Yeah.
It does exactly
Resilient.
what it says.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, we have long sleeve, short sleeve, men's, women's,
Mhm.
children's rash guards. On the back it says healing veterans through stakes, struggles, and stoicism.
I love it.
I like it. Yeah. And between veterans, combat veterans,
Mhm.
combat sports, stoicism things, that's why the combat carnivore is my name. And that butcher blade back there is that's a memento mori stoic emblem on the back. So that's how I became to be.
You can't see it very well, but that is a memento mori,
Oh, nice.
for Iraq.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
Justin Hughes is the artist.
Oh, okay. I like Justin Hughes. I
His
like the
art's
fact that
great.
there's an artist out there committed to death, because
Yes.
death, the more you become face to face acquainted with death, the more meaningful your life will become. And
Yes.
we're so distant from death, and that's what I was talking about earlier with comforts and with pleasures and with distractions,
Mhm.
that we start to lose that hierarchy of what's important in life. So yeah,
Yeah.
death. I have this huge tattoo. My whole back is tattooed. It's death, the Grim Reaper,
Mhm.
and it's like death has your back, because when I was miserable at my job before I started my jujitsu gym, what I started doing, it was a weird practice, is I started putting myself on my deathbed and then negotiating with death. If I had more time, what would I do?
Mm.
And if I was like, what are your regrets? If I could send you back in time, what would you do differently? And what would you pay me in order to do that? And
Mhm.
uh so it was like my salary. Like um I'm willing to pay you $1 million. Well, you don't have $1 million. So you're gonna have to pay me in sacrificing your salary and pretend like that sacrifice in salary is a payment to me to have more time with your family. Things like that. And so I became
Okay.
okay with walking away from my lifestyle, a minimalist lifestyle. I don't believe you own things. I think things own you. And so
Mhm.
it's like, okay, minimalize. Now I don't need so much kitchen space. All I use is a slow cooker or a smoker, right? I just eat meat and I cook on the smoker. I technically don't even need a fridge anymore, even though we have one. I just have frozen meat, defrost it, cook it. You know what I mean? Because our family is all carnivore. And so it's like all this
Yeah.
kitchen space becomes meaningless because I don't use the oven, I don't use the stove, I don't use a microwave, I don't use the dishwasher because we barely have anything. So I don't need a big kitchen anymore. And we were talking about as you get older, what we start doing for the elderly is we prop ourselves up. Americans don't realize that they are never getting up and off the ground. They have chairs that prop them up. They have cars that prop them up. They have, everything is propped up. So they never get down
Mhm.
and up off the ground. In Japan and Italy and places where they're getting up and down all the
Yep.
time, they have better balance. And so for
Mhm.
us, we think we're helping them, but we're actually shortening their life because their hip doesn't get proper rotation. Like, you know what I mean? When you go on the
Mm.
ground, your hip gets certain rotation. You get
Yeah.
strong quads and weak glutes and, tension in certain areas. So you're, as we prop up, as we get older and it becomes easier and we lean on the things that make life easier, it shortens our life for the long run because we're not going through the difficulties. So Like all we don't have mattress or like we don't have mattresses and beds anymore. We have like this little futon. It's like an inch because we believe in sleeping on the floor like our ancestors did. 100% cotton, and so like we're super. I know what was the word for it? Crunchy, even though we're not. That's not the right term anymore, but we're super like
I think that's one
hippies.
thing I won't give up. I'm not giving up a bed. I'm not giving up my bed.
Yeah.
However, we've considered giving up the our couches. Like these couches we're not taking with us when we move. We are moving again. We found out that we are moving. Army is like, we don't know where yet, but your report date is August 10th. Thanks for that. Uh, um, but we're gonna ditch the couches, and we're
Yeah.
considering. My husband is fascinated with Middle Eastern culture,
Yeah.
so having the Middle Eastern living room where it's on the ground.
Yeah. As why it's extra stuff. It takes up space. You know,
It weighs a lot, and you only get so much
you're right.
by way of weight. And we
It
have a
weighs a
lot
lot.
of
Yeah.
books.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Books are good. I'm glad that I moved. I love books, but I've moved more towards electronics because we've been traveling a lot. And as
So many books.
we're moving as well. It's like
Mhm.
for us to move was nothing. No moving van, no whatever, because all of our beds are these
Nice.
little futons that roll up. We get up off of the ground. Like we don't have big things to move anymore. Our biggest thing that we moved was a washer and dryer, which fit into my van. And uh, we didn't even necessarily need to bring that, but as we do jujitsu, laundry is a pretty important aspect of jujitsu.
Um,
So
yes. Please wash your gi
yeah. So
and your rash
but
guard.
everything was so like minimal, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I love the fact that like our bedroom isn't a bed. Like it's like a futon can roll up, and now you have the whole space to do whatever. And then when it's time to go to bed, you like roll it up. And when we travel, we get to bring
Reminds
our
me of the
beds
beds,
with us.
the beds that came down
Yeah.
off the wall, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but the thing is like my back problems, hip problems, all the things from the military got better when I was sleeping on the floor. Like our ancestors slept on hard surfaces, and what we don't realize is
Mhm.
like as we sleep on hard surfaces, we're actually giving ourselves a massage, like self
Mm.
myofascial release, like the stretching.
As long as you can still move, yes.
Yeah.
As a nurse, it's like,
Oh yeah.
if you are immobile and you can't move, then you end up with pressure ulcers, but if you can still move,
Yeah,
then
I imagine
you
so.
were
Yeah.
massaging that, yeah.
And so I've noticed an increase in my sleep by sleeping on the floor and
Nice.
sleeping on a harder surface. So anyway, like the idea is like being a minimalist, right?
Yeah,
Requiring less things. And when you do that, not only do you save money, you save space, you save on
yeah,
requirements, you save on priorities, right? Because like if I want to move, I can move my whole house tomorrow. If like somebody else wants to move, it's like, okay, we gotta get a moving company, we gotta get a van, we gotta
yep,
deal with all this stuff. That's a lot of money and it's expensive and it doesn't do anything for you, but it can actually hinder your health and your
yeah,
physiology, right? Because you're not getting up and down off the ground anymore. And so
yeah,
there's there's a lot that goes into it. So when you are somebody who is talking about like reversing age, I
mhm,
think that is really, really important to do jujitsu because you are getting up and off the ground all the time. You
yeah,
know what your body is like when you fall from every position. You are building up bone density, you're building up bracing ability, and you're building up cardiovascular health, you're building up aerobic and anaerobic health. You know what I mean? And you're increasing
yeah,
BDNF, you're increasing those stress hormones, you're increasing stem cell being released, you're satisfying the macroscopic part of the brain, but also the microscopic part of the brain, and
mhm,
getting yourself on a proper human diet just uh, elicits that allows that to happen, right? Allows all those
yeah,
processes to take place without any resistance. And so stake strangles and stoicism, right? It's
yeah,
start pushing yourself towards the uncomfortable.
yeah,
Start stop living for the comfort. Stop living for the most easiest path to get through the day.
mm,
That's my thing. So if I were to walk away, stake strangles and stoicism. I would say if you want to connect more with me, watch my
mhm,
channel, reach out. I'm going to be talking about
mhm,
this a lot, a lot, a lot. And
okay,
I have like an archive of like in the queue at like 20 videos. I'm just releasing them every day. So I know my
okay,
channel's new. I know my channel's newer, but it's like lots of videos are coming out, and I have a lot of great connections with a lot of people who are talking about this.
Yeah.
Uh, Dr. Anthony
Well, where
Chafee,
are you?
Combat.carnivore for YouTube, and then Combat.carnivore for Instagram.
Yes, but where are you located if somebody wants to
Oh,
come check out your gym?
I am in Colorado Springs right now, but I am moving
Okay.
to Oklahoma. I'm moving to McAllister,
Oh,
Oklahoma, and we're going to build up a gym in McAllister, Oklahoma. And which is why I'm
okay.
kind of like building more of an online thing, is because as I build more locations, the idea is to start reaching people. I feel like I can help more people online because most of these
Mhm.
communities are moving online, and most of the way you can help reach people is going online. So absolutely
Yeah.
find your local gym, but connect with me online, connect with my
Yeah.
gym, connect with my community, right? And then
Yeah.
yeah, so we have like stoic debate on there. We talk about diet and whatnot on there, but the biggest thing is having the full jujitsu course, and the fact that we're going to start live streaming every single class that unless something's going on in my life, but every single day that I'm there, we're going to live stream and archive that into the online community. So for completely free, every single day you can see our live stream of our gym, which will be kind of cool. And since I'm building up
Yeah.
a new gym in Oklahoma, you'll be
Yeah.
able to watch it from the ground up, of like teaching people from the ground up, not
That'd be
just
great.
instructionals. So do that.
Yeah.
Get part of an online community for
Yeah.
Carnivore, whether that is Rebecca's or I work with a steak and butter gang,
Yeah. I
getting
work in
people.
Dr. Barry's community. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dr. Barry, God, Dr. Kim Barry's great. And so find a community where you can ask people like, hey, did you struggle with this?
Mhm.
Did you struggle with that when you first switched over? I think one of the biggest things is it's smooth sailing, right? Carnivore is a
Yes.
smooth sailing, easy, don't have to think about it. Love every single meal. It's so awesome. I feel great.
Yep.
But those first couple weeks, that first month, woo, like
You need a
for me,
little
it
bit
was
of
rough
support. Yeah. You need
because you're
some
completely
support.
changing. You're changing the
Yeah.
entire physiology of your physiological processes of your
Yeah.
energy sources,
Yeah.
period.
Well, I did link your link tree in the description so that that is there.
Thank
Um,
you.
also, yeah, so you can do that. If anybody is is active duty military, they're interested. I do have a Facebook community, and it's like meat based eating for active duty military. That's on Facebook. If people want to join that, we've got some big hitters in there, like Bronson Dant is in there. Also, if you are suffering from suicidal thoughts or ideations, you can now dial 988 and be connected to a suicide crisis hotline. And if you are a veteran or anybody else is suffering with PTSD and are suicidal, please reach out to somebody that can help because you deserve it.
Absolutely. Okay. Everything about that. Yes. And you can reach out to me. Like I was in that
Mm-hmm.
place before. And that's one thing we kind of mentioned earlier, we kind of alluded to earlier, is
Mm-hmm.
people want to listen to certain people, you know, who was suicidal, who got over it, who has PTSD, who got over it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to understand. They're going to kind of know, because a lot of the
Yeah.
time you're like, no one's going to understand what I'm going through. And when you explain it to
Mm-hmm.
doctors who are paid to listen to you, like, here's an
Mm-hmm.
SSRI, because what's the
Yeah.
likelihood that they went through the same thing? They went to medical school. You know what I mean? They prescribe drugs.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
their thing.
It's what
So,
you're taught. Yep.
exactly. So, like, if you want to reach out to me, that's one of my biggest things, is make veterans great
Mm-hmm.
again. Uh, all the merch, like I said, if you buy one of these shirts for a veteran, for yourself, for your kids, whatever, Veterans Days,
Mm-hmm.
I think this would be a great gift for Veterans Day. Uh, we're using all that to get this message out to as many people as possible. But if you want to reach out to me,
Yeah.
guys, you are not broken. People who have PTSD are not broken. It's designed to make you stronger.
Right.
Stronger. The tribulations, the trials and tribulations of your life
Yeah.
are designed to grow you. They're designed to release hormones, chemicals in your body to make you stronger. The fact that you are being broken down is a result of the drug companies and the food companies that you are currently involved in, and the fact that your life
Mm-hmm.
is too easy, right? Get involved in jujitsu, get on the right diet, start looking at philosophies that make you responsibility in the heart of
Mm-hmm.
your decision making and responses. So,
Yeah.
that being said, well, I want to just point this out. Out of the 8,000 veterans a year that commit suicide, over 5,000 of them are ages 50 years and older, which shows me that this is
Hmm.
a chronic issue, which means it's getting worse
Yeah.
and worse in terms
Yeah.
of everybody's physical body in like personal experience. Whereas World War I and World War II veterans, they had a spike in PTSD and suicide, but then afterwards it leveled out and they got better and they lived full careers and full lives and full
Yeah.
families. And I'm sure that there are certain things that like brought them back with like a flashback, but overall, they generally recovered as much as you can from surviving World War I and World War II,
Yeah.
years at a time, um, in foreign countries and being shot at and not seeing your wife for years, like a,
Yeah. Yeah.
a
Because
lot of
they
these
went
things.
long times. Yeah.
Right. And like mustard gas, gas chlorine, and pneumonia and like all these different types of warfare were just ugly, So
Hmm.
uh we're in a completely different time. And
Yeah.
not that I should be comparing wars, but I can't imagine that you would survive World War I and World War II and recover better than the war and terror. And I get that there's different aspects of it, but
Hmm.
you're supposed to get better. That's the thing. You are not broken.
Yeah.
What you're going through right now is an environmental, unfortunate, what's the best word for this? Conundrum that you can fix that is not
Yeah.
forever. And that's how I felt. It was like, well, I'm just broken. I need to figure out how to mitigate this. No, like you can recover and you can thrive, right? The fears that you have could end up being your greatest strengths. You just
I
got to
love that you put
seek
it that
it.
you are not broken. You are not broken. Because that's what we as a society look at PTSD as people that are broken. And it's not true. They're not
It's not true.
broken.
No, we got to start
Yeah.
getting those memories that are trapped in your hippocampus, saying that it's a fight or flight response. And you start getting
Hmm.
it to the prefrontal cortex. Like Jiu Jitsu is going to do that. The proper
Hmm.
physiological processes, like getting on carnivore, is going to do that, making
Hmm.
you responsible. Like you said, always negative thoughts, right? Like ants. If you're always negative, like Stoicism helps you get to like a positive sense where it's like you constantly start responding to things positively. Like
Yeah.
the mind, body, and the soul all working together, something that reminds you that you're an animal, that you're uniquely human, and that you're humanly unique. Start expanding on these things, and I
Mhm.
promise you, you're gonna. Why I say I promise you, if you're following this correctly, I can almost guarantee that you're gonna see some sort of improvement. You're gonna see
Movement. Yeah.
some sort of push forward in the right direction, and even just wedging yourself free of that place where you feel stuck at least gets you on the right
Yeah.
path. So get uncomfortable, find growth in discomfort, and try something new, right?
And join a community. That I think that's probably one of the biggest things is don't do this alone. Like reach out to either you can reach out to me and I can hook you up with a community. You can reach out to Chad and he will hook you up with his community and Steak and Butter Gangs community. Some really great people over there. Really great people in Dr. Barry's community, and we're here for anybody that needs the help.
Yeah. Remember, we've been through it. We
Yeah.
most know this. If you are hurting, like, yeah, I want to get the healthiest person out there right now on
Mhm.
carnivore because they're going to get even healthier. I get that for
Yeah.
sports performance and whatnot. But I'm telling you, I would dare to say that over 90% of the people who are on a carnivore diet got here not by choice. They got here because they
It
were
was a last
broken,
resort.
yes, and they were desperate, right?
Yeah.
So you are not the only one. This is not like, well, this is just me and I have a special case. You know, in that sense, you are not special. Most of us here overcame atrocities and we were desperate, and this was the last hope. This was the
Yeah.
Hail Mary. And so, anywho, like we have seen, and I've only been, part of this community for a couple years, but we have seen so much recovery, health,
Yes.
growth, miracles, if you can call them that, things that weren't
Hmm.
supposed to heal, healing. You
Yes.
in Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson, they're big
Mhm.
advocates, right? But we have seen so much growth, so much healing
Yeah.
that the even though it's anecdotal, it's like we're talking about hundreds of thousands of anecdotes by this point.
Yes. Well, even that Harvard study, there was a Harvard study done on carnivores, and it showed that like so many people healed from metabolic diseases And
Yes.
then a couple years later, they decided to slam it, saying, "Oh, well, they might have done this, but it's so bad for you."
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So I just got my labs done. And what's weird is I'm looking at all my labs as I do my medical paperwork. I'm just seeing how I'm
Yeah,
getting better and better and better. But yeah, the idea is we know what path you're going down right now. If you stay on the
yeah,
standard American diet, we know what's going to happen. We've seen over 30,000 vets commit suicide. We see 135 people a day commit suicide. So if you're already going down that path, might as well let's give it the experiment. You're looking at thousands of people right now who have got off mental health drugs
drugs.
they're not,
Yeah,
and they're
I
now
was on
mentally healthy,
SSRIs. Yeah,
right? So you're
like
seeing thousands
so
of
many
people
of
do
us
this.
have.
Like, take the gamble. Fine. Like, you already know this is the guarantee if you don't do anything different. This is your a
Yeah,
life full of SSRIs and maybe suicide. We already know that's the
yeah,
path, right? Like, so cool. Let's experiment. Let's throw a Hail Mary. Try it out.
yeah,
What's the worst that happens? You know what I mean? Like, if you're already on the path to that dark place, if you're suicidal, if you're not going, you already know. So, I mean, might as well throw in a loose wild card, right? And if you get
yeah.
better, then aren't you glad you did it? So, uh,
Just make sure you press play and start recording it because the transformation is going to be amazing.
yes, yeah, I wish I did with mine. I mean, I find pictures of me kind of like chubby and not doing so well. Yeah, I know like my face breaking out.
Yes.
I just remember like how mentally exhausted and torturous I was. And now when I see pictures of myself, I actually like pictures of myself. Like,
Well, 2018 is when I started, and it was like there wasn't a whole lot of people doing like influencer status type
yeah,
stuff with it. So it's just like I did it because it was like I heard it can help autoimmune disease. Let's go. And
yes.
I didn't keep track, and yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
wish I
know what
would
you're
have.
talking about. But thank you so much for having me on.
No, thank you for being on. This has been great, and I think more people need to bring more awareness. So anytime you want to come back on, let me know.
Absolutely, yeah. I love talking about this, and I love
Yeah,
going down the rabbit holes of it, and I love the idea that 22 vets a day commit suicide. So if I can reach one vet out there, that would be awesome. But if we can get this message out there, imagine how many lives would be saved.
we could say, yeah,
135 people a day. I mean, potentially, if this message became mainstream.
yeah, it'd be great. So,
I
well, I was gonna say thanks for being here.
Yes,
All
absolutely.
right. So everybody in the description, his link tree. So I go there, check him out, check out his dojo, and we will see everybody again next time. Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.